want to welcome you guys to Koinonia Shalom Midweek Bible Study. I thank you guys for being here. I thank you guys for listening in. And let's get into this. Let's get into this word. The word of the Lord is just so magnificent. It's so good. And just time in prayer is so important. I mean, myself and Nana, we just pressed in prayer, and it was, oh my goodness, it was like the Lord just met us in prayer on tonight, met us in prayer tonight, and I'm just, that experience was just so amazing, so amazing. But let's get into this Bible study. Um, we're in Genesis chapter 25, guys. Genesis chapter 25. Um, Lord, I just can't shake His presence right now. Jesus, worthy. Genesis chapter 25. Last time we had Bible study, we went over Ephesians chapter 4, but the last chapter we went over in Genesis was Genesis chapter 24. And when we went over Genesis chapter 24, we talked about a lot. We talked about what took place, what took place with Isaac and Rebekah, and Isaac bringing Rebekah into the place that was prepared for her, which was his father's house. Um, we talked about, the completion of the servant's mission, who we believe to be Eliezer. We talked about the hesed of the Lord, which is his which is translated as loving kindness and steadfast love and seen as mercy, and how it just acts on our behalf to the degree of us in return treating others with the same hesed, the same steadfast love, the same loving kindness, the same benefactor mentality that God has towards us. We treat others with that same, bearing the infirmities of the weak, and helping our brothers and our sisters when they cannot help themselves. We talked about that. We talked about so much in Genesis chapter 24. There was a lot to go over. There was a lot that was expressed. But this week here, we are getting into Genesis chapter 25. And we're going to be reading Genesis chapter 25, but I also want to get into the book of Jubilees, because this particular topic, Genesis chapter 25, is about Abraham's death and Abraham's descendants. It we get to the point where in Genesis chapter 25, where we're going to see that Isaac and Rebekah has their children. Um, and the reason why I want to I want us to read Jubilees alongside this, because Genesis chapter 25 does not is not in chronological order at all. It's just listing the events that has taken place in relevance before we get into Isaac, which is in Genesis 26, him being God's promise, him being the one to continue the legacy of Abraham. Before we get into Isaac's full story, you get what I'm saying? We have Genesis chapter 25. So this is why I want us to read Jubilees, so we can deal with what had taken place at this time period between Sarah dying and then Abraham dying. Between that timeline, there was a lot of stuff that took place. Okay, and we're gonna read about it. So let's start off Genesis chapter 25. Start off with verse 1. It's about 34 verses, and we're gonna get into it. Um, but after I read this, I want us to jump into the book of Jubilees, and in Jubilees, we're gonna start at chapter 19. Okay. Okay, so Genesis chapter 25, starting at verse 1, it says, Abraham took another wife whose name was Keturah. She bore him Zimron, Jokshan, Medan, Midian, Ishbak, and Shua. Jokshan fathered Sheba and Dedan. The sons of Dedan were Asherim, okay, were the Assyrians. Lutashim and Limim. The sons of Midian were Ephah, Epher, Hanuk, Abida, and Eldah. All these were the children of Keturah. Abraham gave, so he had 6 children with Keturah. Okay. Abraham gave all he had to Isaac, but to the sons of his concubines, Abraham gave gifts. And while he was still living, he sent them away from his son Isaac eastward to the east coast, to the east country. These are the days of the years of Abraham's life. 175 years. Abraham lived 175 years. Abraham breathed his last and died in a good old age, an old man and full of years, meaning he had completed his years, and was gathered to his people. Isaac and Ishmael, his sons, buried him in the cave of Machpelah in the field of Ephron, the son of Zohar, the Hittite, east of Mamre, the field that Abraham purchased from the Hittites. There Abraham was buried with Sarah his wife. After the death of Abraham, God blessed Isaac his son, and Isaac settled at Beer-lahai, which is the well of vision, or the well where God sees. Um, these are the generations of Ishmael, Abraham's son, whom Hagar the Egyptian, Sarah's servant, bore to Abraham. These are the names of the sons of Ishmael, named in order of their birth. Nabehoth, the firstborn of Ishmael, Kedar, Adbeel, Mibsam, Mishma, Duma, Massa, Hadad, Tema, Jetur, Naphish, and Kedama. These are the sons of Ishmael, and these are the names by their villages and by their encampments. 12 princes according to their tribes. So Ishmael had 12 children. These are the years of the life of Ishmael, 137 years. He breathed his last and died and was gathered to his people. They settled from Havilah to Shur, which is opposite Egypt, in the direction of Assyria. He settled over against all his kinsmen. These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. So it goes over, it went over, we're here at verse 19. It went over the children, the 6 more children that Abraham had with Keturah. Then it went over Isaac's generations, his 12 sons. Now it's going over, it went over Ishmael's generations, his 12 sons. Now we're going into Isaac. These are the generations of Isaac, Abraham's son. Abraham fathered Isaac. And Isaac was 40 years old when he took Rebekah, the daughter of Bethuel, the Armenian, of Padan Aram, the sister of Laban, the Armenian, to be his wife. And Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife, because she was barren. And the Lord granted his prayer, and Rebekah, his wife, conceived. The children struggled together within her, and she said, "If it is thus, why is this happening to me?" So she went to inquire of the Lord. And the Lord said to her, "Two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger." When her days to give birth were completed, behold, there were twins in her womb. The first came out red all his body like a hairy cloak. So they called his name Esau. Afterward, his brother came out with his hand holding Esau's heel. So his name was called Jacob. Isaac was 60 years old when she bore them. When the boy, so he was 60 years old when he had his children. This is 20 years. That means she was barren for 20, she was barren for you could say 19 years. Okay. Almost 20, or we could say 20 years. She was barren for 20 years, and then she finally conceived and brought forth them after 20 years, barren for 20 years. It says, when the boys grew up, Esau was a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while Jacob was a quiet man dwelling in tents. Isaac loved Esau because he ate of his game, but Rebekah loved Jacob. Once when Jacob was cooking stew, Esau came in from the field and he was exhausted. And Esau said to Jacob, let me eat some of that red stew, for I am exhausted. Therefore his name was called Edom. Jacob said, sell me your birthright now. Esau said, I am about to die, or of what use is a birthright to me? Jacob said to him, swear to me now. So he swore to him and sold his birthright to Jacob. Then Jacob gave Esau bread and lentil stew, and he ate and drank and rose and went his way. Thus Esau despised his birthright. Now, there's over 3 different topics here. You have the birth, you have Abraham marrying Keturah and bringing forth 6 sons, 6 more sons, possibly daughters as well. You have the birth of Isaac and Jacob after 20 years of barrenness from Rebekah. Then you have these young men growing up, and it says that Esau he sells his birthright after being famished coming out of Pharaoh. He sells his birthright to his brother for some red stew. Okay. With all this that is being talked about in here, when you go to the next chapter, it's like it just continues so quickly. And there's no explanation or no details that go into this. I mean, the next chapter goes right into Abimelech, but there's so much that took place here. There's so much context that's not seen here. Okay, how did he meet Keturah? Where did she come from? Right? What else can we think of? The thing of Jacob and Esau, not even the thing of Jacob and Esau. Rebecca, her being barren for 20 years because he had his sons at 60 and he got married at 40. Her being barren for 20 years and her going to inquire of the Lord, because Isaac prayed to the Lord for his wife. Isaac prayed when she was barren. When she finally had the children, it says that the children struggled in her, to the point of her going to inquire to find out, why is this happening? So she went to inquire of the Lord. Now, at that time, you don't just go somewhere to talk to the Lord. At that time, you don't just when we look at the scriptures, when we look at what was taking place here, um, when we look at Adam, when we look at what it talks about Enoch, when we look at Noah, when we look at even, let's say, Abraham, there's no time where any of them went to a place to inquire of the Lord. Do anybody understand that? Like, do anybody concur with that or see anything different? Is there any time in scripture from what we read so far? I'm not talking about after this point. I'm talking about before this. So I'm talking about from 25 back to Genesis chapter 1. Is there any record of God, of the people seeking God in a place? Because from what we've been reading, God has always come to them. He came to Adam in the garden. He came to Noah to tell him to build the ark, right? He came to Abraham to tell him to get up out of his father's house. But nowhere where do we have record of them going to seek him out. He actually sought them out. So here And Genesis 25 and 22, we have it saying that Rebecca goes and inquire of the Lord. How does she go about this? Because then it says, and the Lord said to her, two nations are in your womb, and two peoples from within you shall be divided. The one shall be stronger than the other. The older shall serve the younger. So we also have here something taking place out of the norm. One thing that's taking place out of the norm here is that the older is going to serve the younger. We have a lot going on here that needs further explanation. Um, the whole thing about the two nations and these two brothers being twins, right? And Esau, we have years. There's a time skip taking place in these verses. There's a time skip taking place. You have Esau being said to be a skillful hunter, a man of the field, while you have Jacob being quiet and dwelling in the tents. But when you read it, they was just born. So you realize that there's a time skip taking place in this chapter from Abraham dying to it saying that Ishmael died at 137. Then you got the sons being born, and it's like, okay, that can't be truly so because when not truly so, it can't add up the way it is here. This is how we know this is not chronological. This is speaking of relevance, the relevant things that was happening during this time in Genesis. What the author wants us to know is that Abraham died, Ishmael died, Isaac had his two sons, his wife was barren for some time, and then he had his two sons, and then his two sons, there's a power struggle between them to the point of now his oldest son end up despising his birthright. So let's get into the book of Jubilees because, like I said, there's context that need to be seen here. Let's get into the book of Jubilees. To those who have it, we're going to be in Jubilees chapter 19. To those who don't have it, just listen. I'm going to read it out. Okay. Jubilees chapter 19, starting at verse 1. It says, and I'm starting from when Sarah died. Okay. In the first year of the first week in this 42nd Jubilee, Abraham returned and dwelt 2 weeks of years opposite Hebron and Kiriath Arba. And in the first year of the third week of this Jubilee, the days of Sarah's life were completed, and she died in Hebron. And Abraham went to weep for her and bury her. And we were testing him whether he would exercise self-control, and he was not impatient with the words of his mouth, and he was found self-controlled in this also. And he was not filled with anxiety, because with the self-control of his spirit he spoke with the sons of Hev, so that they might give him a place in which to bury his dead. Let me stop real quick. Real quick, I know I explained this before about Jubilees, but I'm gonna explain it again. Jubilees is supposed to be an account given of the events that Moses never saw. It's supposed to be an account of basically the history of the generations from each Jubilee. So every 49th year, what took place in every 49th year up until the point of Moses. It's Jubilees is supposed to be is believed from based upon what we read in Jubilees that the account of Genesis was given to Moses on Mount Sinai when he was up there for 40 days and 40 nights. Yes, like Tiara said, some call it second Genesis or little Genesis, right? So it's the account that was given to Moses of the Genesis account while he was on Mount Sinai for 40 days and 40 nights. According to what we read, the Lord sent the angel to tell Moses the history from the time of Adam all the way to the time that the children of Israel got into Egypt. And Jubilees is divided into divisions, and every Jubilee is calculated. That's why this book is called Jubilees, because the Jubilee was 49 years, and then the 50th year was that time of celebration. Okay. So now let me finish reading, because that's when you hear and it's the angel talking to, it's the angel telling Moses the accounts of everything. Okay. It says, and all the days of the life of Sarah were 127. These are 2 jubilees and 4 weeks and 1 year. These are the days of the life of Sarah. This is the 10th trial which Abraham was tried. And he was found faithful, controlled of spirit, and he did not say a word concerning the rumor which was in the land, that the Lord said he would give it to him and to his seed after him. But he begged a place there so that he might bury his dead, because he was found faithful, and he was recorded as a friend of the Lord in the heavenly tablets. And in the 4th year thereof, he took a wife for his son Isaac, and her name was Rebekah, daughter of Bethuel, the son of Nahor, Abraham's brother, the sister of Laban, and daughter of Bethuel. And Bethuel was the son of Milcah, who was the wife of Nahor, Abraham's brother. And Abraham took a third wife, and her name was Keturah, from the daughters of his household servants, because Hagar died before Sarah. So even if people were to question, why didn't he just go get Hagar? Jubilees is telling us Hagar died before Sarah. She died before Sarah. So he then took a third wife. Okay. Her name was Keturah, from the daughters of his household servants, because Hagar died before Sarah. And she bore 6 sons for him: Zimron, Jokshan, and Medan, Midian, and Ishbak, and Shua, and 2 weeks of years. And in the 6th week, in the 2nd year, Rebekah bore 2 children for Isaac, Jacob and Esau. So in the 6th week, and the 2nd year, Rebekah bore children for Isaac. Okay. And Jacob was smooth and upright, but Esau was a fierce man, and rusick and hairy. And Jacob used to dwell in the tents. And the youths grew up, and Jacob learned writing. But Esau did not learn, because he was a rusick man and a hunter. He was a rough fellow, right? And he learned war, and all of his deeds were fierce. So he learned battle. And Abraham loved Jacob. See, listen to this, because when you add up Isaac's years, remember how I was doing a calculation of who Adam was alive for so long, when they say Adam died at 930, and then it talks about how his descendants, some of them, how long they died, and I was telling you that basically going all the way up to Noah, Adam died, I think, like, I want to say probably like maybe 100 and something years before Noah. Somebody raised their hand. I thought I saw it. Never mind. Um,
I see a hand too, though.
huh? You saw it too?
It's still on my screen. Yeah.
Okay. So remember how I went through that timeline of how Adam was still alive during a good time during his descendants' lives, and even getting into how Shem was alive during a good amount of his descendants' life. For real? Okay,
Yep.
thank you, Trinity. Um, he Shem was alive during a good time of his descendants' life. And even we could, even if we track how old Shem was, he was alive during the time of Abraham. And we know that it was Shem who was talked about when Abraham met Melchizedek, when we went over it when in the past lessons, right? So it's not strange to say that Abraham was still alive during the birth of his grandsons. Matter of fact, when Abraham died, if we do the calculations, his grandsons would have been around teenage years, going towards what we call today adulthood. But in those days, they matured quicker. Okay, so it says, and Abraham loved Jacob, but Isaac loved Esau. And Abraham saw the deeds of Esau, and he knew that in Jacob a name and seed would be named for him. And he called Rebekah and commanded concerning Jacob, because he knew that she loved Jacob more than Esau. And he said to her, my daughter, guard my son Jacob, because he will be in place of me upon the earth for a blessing in the midst of the sons of men, and a glory to all of the seed of Shem, because I know that the Lord will choose him for himself as a people who will rise up from all the nations which are upon the earth. And behold, Isaac my son loves Esau more than Jacob, but I see you as one who loves Jacob rightly. Be even better to him, and let your eyes be lovingly upon him, because he will be for us a blessing upon the earth, henceforth, and for all generations of the earth. I'm going to stop real quick. Matter of fact, no, I'm keep going. Let your hands be strong, and let your heart rejoice in your son Jacob, because I love him more than all of my sons. He will be blessed forever, and his seed will be one which fills all the earth. If a man is able to count the sand of the earth, then his seed will be counted. And all the blessings with which the Lord blessed me and my seed will be for Jacob and his seed always. And in his seed, my name will be blessed, and the names of my fathers, Shem, Noah, and Enoch, and Mahaliel, and Enos, and Seth, and Adam. And they will serve to establish heaven, and to strengthen the earth, and to renew all of the lights which are above the firmament. Stop right here real quick. So with all of this that's being said, all this context that's being said, it's funny because it says that Rebecca went to inquire of the Lord when her sons were struggling in her belly. They were struggling, they was pushing back and forth, they was struggling for room. One wanted to take up more room than the other, right? Now, it's funny because in the book of Genesis, it says that that the son struggled. You don't hear that here in Jubilees. You just hear that they was born. When you get to in the book of Yasher, which is another book mentioned in scripture, and you see it mentioned in scripture in the book of Joshua, okay, where it talks about the sun stood still. When they said, is it not recorded in the book of Yasher, right? In the book of Yasher, it talks about how Rebecca actually went to before Abraham died, she went to inquire of Abraham so that he can speak to the Lord on her behalf. And then when he sought the Lord told him what was taking place, and then the Lord gave him a prophetic word, and at that time he prophesied over Jacob and Esau. And this is why I'm saying to you, when you look at the account of how the Lord used to deal with man prior to Christ, prior to the temple, prior to the sanctuary, prior to the Levitical priesthood, right? Right? Prior to Moses, when you get to when you deal with Adam, Noah, Enoch, Mahaliel, all of them, you get to Abraham, God always came to them. And so when you have an instance in Genesis where it says that she went to inquire of the Lord, the context of the situation is, yes, she went to inquire of the Lord, but what did she go to? She went to a prophet. Who was the prophet in that day and age? Abraham. Abraham was the prophet at the time. She went to inquire of the prophet, which was Abraham. And Abraham sought the Lord on behalf of her womb, and then it was received. But we're going to keep reading. And we see here that Abraham had a deep affinity for Jacob because he saw in Jacob the promises being fulfilled. He saw that Jacob was the one to receive the promises because he saw Esau's mannerisms. Okay, let's look. And it puts it gives a little context because when we get to later on and the story with Jacob and Esau, now we understand why Rebecca did some of the things she did, right? But let's keep reading. And he called to Jacob in the sight of Rebekah his mother, and he kissed him and blessed him and said, Jacob, my beloved son, whom my soul loves, may God from above the firmament Bless and may he give you all of the blessings with which he blessed Adam and Enoch and Noah and Shem, and everything which he told me and everything which he has said he would give me, may he cause to cleave to you and your seed forever according to the days of heaven above the earth. And may the spirit of Mastema not rule over you or over your seed in order to remove you from following the Lord, who is your God henceforth and forever. And may the Lord God be for you and for the people a father always, and may you be a firstborn son. Go, my son, in peace. And the two of them went out together from Abraham, and Rebekah loved Jacob with all her heart and all her soul, so much more than Esau. But Isaac loved Esau more than Jacob. Chapter 20. This is what it says. And in the 42nd Jubilee, and the first year of the seventh week, Abraham called Ishmael and his 12 children, and Isaac and his 2 children, and Keturah's 6 children and their sons. Now listen to this, because Genesis tells us, Genesis chapter 25 tells us that upon him getting ready to transition, he gave Isaac all he had, and he gave gifts to the other sons and then sent them eastward. So that basically, why would he do that? So there wouldn't be conflict between Isaac and the other children. So there wouldn't be conflict between the child of promise and the other children. And we know it's going to be conflict with Ishmael because of the way how Ishmael came into being. Whereas Keturah and them not so much. Keturah's children not so much because they were afterwards. It wasn't an issue with them. But we know Ishmael was definitely going to be an issue because of the way he came into being, right? It says, and he commanded them that they should guard the way of the Lord, so that they might do righteousness, and each one might love his neighbor, and that it should be thus among all men, so that each one might proceed to act justly and rightly toward them upon the earth. And that they should circumcise their sons in the covenant which he made with them, and that they should not cross over either to the right or to the left from all of the ways which the Lord commanded us, and that we should keep ourselves from all fornication and pollution, and that we should set aside from among us all fornication and pollution. And when any woman or girl fornicates among you, you will burn her with fire, and let them not fornicate with her after their eyes and hearts, and let them not take wives from the girls of Canaan, because of the seed, because of the seed of Canaan will be rooted out of the land. Listen to this. And he told them that the judgment of the giants, the Nephilim, and the judgments of the Sodomites, right? Just as they had been judged on account of their evil and on account of their fornication and impurity and the corruption among themselves with fornication, they died. So we have here Abraham before he passed. We have him counseling his children and warning his children not to follow in the way of the Nephilim, the woman who slept with the Nephilim, the children of the Nephilim, and then also warn them not to follow in the footsteps of the Sodomites. What do they have in common? Sexual impurity, sexual immorality. Now, a lot of people, when they see the word fornication, they automatically jump to sex before marriage. That is not the only, or that is not even what fornication is about. Not at all. Matter of fact, if we was to go, let me open this up because I want to show you guys. Can you see my screen? Let me know when you can see it.
Yeah, we can see it.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I'm in the ESV. Let me get out of the ESV. Actually, no, I'm in the Give me 1 second. Okay, so I'll go right here real quick. Fornication. Let's go to fornication. Okay. Fornication comes from the Hebrew word zanah. Y'all see this? Hebrew word zanah. To commit fornication. Be a harlot. Play the harlot. To be a harlot, act as a harlot, commit fornication, to commit adultery, to be a cult prostitute, to be unfaithful to God, figuratively, to play the harlot, to cause to commit adultery, to force into prostitution, to commit fornication. Now, when you go into the definition all the way, right? A primitive root, highly fed and therefore wanton, or meaning that you don't have no filter, or having no care, to commit adultery, usually of the female, and less often or simple fornication, rarely of involuntary ravishment. Figuratively, to commit idolatry, the Jewish people being regarded as the spouse of Jehovah, caused to commit fornication continually and great, right? Harlot, whoredom, commit whoredom, be a whore, things of that nature, right? When you understand what it is, it's anything that is sexual immorality, especially when you get into the Greek. When you get into the Greek, it's described as sexual immorality. Harlotry was sexually immoral, and this is why it talks about it comes from this root zana, and it's let's look at this. The pictograph of the designing is a picture of an agricultural cutting implement such as a mattock or a hoe. The noon is a picture of a seed. Combined, these mean mattock of the seed. One of the many agricultural tools was a hoe or mattock. This implement had a wide blade for cutting a plant stalks at the roots. The crops were harvested for a supply of foods, which were stored in jars. Now let's look at it. Kind. It means kind, a species of plant or animal. It speaks to whoredom and the sense of being spread abroad. Why? Because this is what you did with a mattock or a hoe, right? What you did was you will hold it in your arms, and this time for harvest, right? The harvest time has come. You will go and start to cut, and as you cut, all of the seeds and everything that was in that field was spread out. It was spread out. So whoredom is described and understood as being spread. Okay, being spread, and it has the root of zanah, because when you are spread, you are wide open. This is why when it comes to whoredom, and when you talk about the earth, and when you talk about a field, it's compared, or is metaphorically called a she. Okay, because seeds are planted by the gardener or the husband. He plants the seed, and the field, being that it is open to what he is planting, it brings forth fruit. When a woman has herself open to many lovers, many husbands, many men, when she's open to receiving many seeds, she's what she's doing is she's committing whoredom. She's committing fornication. And this is and remember, you got to remember, a fornicator in Old Testament times was a temple prostitute. Now, can anybody tell me what are some of the things that temple prostitutes were a part of? What are some of the acts, lewd acts they did? Anybody know? Just real
Uh,
quick.
you mean like? I mean, I'm sorry. Can you repeat the question?
Can someone tell me what are the acts that temple prostitutes used to partake of
I
in
mean,
the temple?
they engage in like orgies. Um, they engaged in like a lot of different lewd sexual acts. Of course, when it came time for the burning of children, they probably sacrificed them.
Hmm.
Um, things like that.
Okay. So they orgies, they committed basically same sex gender things, homosexuality or sodomy. They committed idolatry, because a temple prostitute was in most cases a high priest, and they were idolaters, a lot of them. It was their form of worship. They committed bestiality, depending on how the deity looked at the time. If it was some type of animal, they would commit lewd acts with that animal. They did sacrifices. They partook in all types of witchcraft and sorcery. Okay. They were very lewd with their outer parts, with their bodies, right? They committed adultery, sleeping with people's husbands, sleeping with people's wives, mostly sleeping with people's wives at the time. Because when we talk about Sodom and Gomorrah, remember we talked about the feast that they would have at that time, where someone's wife and their daughters will go to the feast and they'll sleep with anybody that they want during that time. And then after the feast is done, they act like nothing happened. Remember, we had that lesson. So fornication in this time period was more than just wasn't it, sex before marriage wasn't even a thing, because sex before marriage didn't really come up as a law, and it wasn't even a law when you get to the Ten Commandments, and even when you get to the laws of Moses. There's the penalty for a couple, right? The penalty for a couple committing what people today call fornication was that they had to get married. There was no sin, there was no death penalty on a young man and a young woman that had sex before marriage. What they had to do was that young man, the only condition was that young man had to go to the father, pay her bride price, and he had to marry her, and he could not divorce her. That's scripture. So, but what we do have here was that if someone committed bestiality, they was put to death. If someone committed whoredom or harlotry, meaning that you are having sex with many lovers, you were put to death. And you're getting paid for it, or some type of form of worship, you were put to death. You were burned at the stake, things of that nature. If someone was sleeping with animals, you was put to death. Somebody was committing some type of sorcery, necromancy, these things, you were put to death. These are types of fornication. It's illicit, illegal sexual behaviors that goes past any type of discipline. It's an insatiable desire. Okay, that's what fornication is. So this is what Abraham is warning his sons about, because these are the things that the other ones before them died from. This was the cause of the flood. There was so much fornication going on. Remember, it talked about how the giants, right? It said that they began to not only sleep with women, right? The children of men, which was the woman, and they bore sons, which were giants, Nephilim, but they also did the same acts with the animals. So that's how in Greek mythology, Roman mythology, and a lot of these old world religions, you get centaurs, minotaurs, right? You get a animal with a man's head, but a goat's body, because of acts of fornication. So the old world was destroyed by the flood because of fornication. And then you get to Sodom and Gomorrah and they're doing fornication. So they also get destroyed by sulfur and fire and things of that nature, right? They get destroyed by fire and brimstone because of fornication. So what does Abraham do? Before he passes, he warns his sons, from Isaac to Ishmael and his 12, and to Keturah 6 and their sons, not to partake of the fornications that those nations and those peoples of the old world committed. Now let's continue. Let me come out of this. Anybody got anything to ask or say before I move on? Are y'all keeping up? I just want to know. Anybody got any questions or anything, or any statements they want to make? Just wanted to know. Make sure y'all keeping up. Okay. Okay. I'm gonna keep reading. It says, and you guard yourself from all fornication and impurity, and from all corruption of sin, so that you might not make our name a curse, and all your life a hissing. Listen, and all your sons a destruction by the sword, and you will be cursed like Sodom, and all your remnant like the sons of Gomorrah. I exhort you, my sons, love the God of heaven and be joined to all of his commands, and do not go after their idols and after their defilement, and do not make gods of molten or carved images for yourselves, because it is vain, and they have no spirit, because they are the work of hands. And all those who trust in them trust in nothing. Do not worship them, do not bow down to them, but worship the Most High God and bow down to him continually, and hope for his countenance always, and do what is right, do what is upright and righteous before him, so that he might be pleased with you, and grant you his mercy, and bring down rain for you morning and evening, and bless all your works which you have made on the earth, and bless your food and your water, and bless the fruit of your womb, and the fruit of your land, and the herds of your cattle, and the flocks of your sheep, and you will become a blessing upon the earth, and all of the nations of the earth will desire you, and they will bless your sons and my name, and so that they might be blessed just as I am. And he gave gifts to Ishmael and to his sons and to the sons of Keturah, and he sent them away from Isaac. See, now we all caught up. And he sent them away from Isaac, his son, and he gave everything to Isaac, his son. And Ishmael and his sons and the sons of Keturah and their sons went together, and they dwelt from Paran to the entrance to Babylon, and all of the land which faces the east opposite the desert. And these mixed with each other, and they are called Arabs or Ishmaelites. Y'all hear that? That's where they come from. Arabs and Ishmaelites are the descendants of Ishmael and the 6 sons of Keturah. Ishmael's and his 12 sons, Keturah's 6 sons and their sons. They are what make up the Arabs and the Ishmaelites. Chapter 21, Abraham's farewell testimony to Isaac. Listen to it. And in the 6th year of the 7th week of this Jubilee, Abraham called Isaac his son, and he commanded him, saying, I am old, and I do not know the day of my death, and I am filled with my days. Behold, I am 175 years old. And throughout all the days of my life, I have been remembering the Lord and sought with all my heart to do his will and walk uprightly in all his way. I hated idols, and those who serve them I have rejected. And I have offered my heart and spirit so that I might be careful to do the will of the one who created me, because he is the living God. And he is holy and faithful, and he is more righteous than all others. And there is no accepting of persons with him or accepting of gifts, because he is a righteous God, and he is the one who executes judgment with all who transgress his commandments and despise his covenant. And you, my son, keep his commandments and ordinances and judgments, and do not follow pollutions or graven images or molten images, and do not eat any blood, or beast, or cattle, or any bird which flies in heaven. And if you slaughter a sacrifice as an acceptable burnt offering of peace, slaughter it, but pour out its blood on the altar, and offer up all the fat of the burnt offering on the altar with fine flour kneaded with oil, together with its libation. You will on the altar with you will offer it all together on the altar as a burnt offering, a sweet aroma before the Lord, and the fat of the thanksgiving offering you will place upon the fire which is on the altar. You shall remove the fat which is on the belly of all the fat of the internal organs and 2 kidneys, all of the fat which is on them, and on the thighs and the liver together with the kidneys. And you will offer all of this up as a sweet aroma, which is acceptable before the Lord, together with its fruit offering and its libation for a sweet odor, the bread of a burnt offering to the Lord. And eat its flesh on the day and in the 2nd day, but do not let the sun of the second day, set upon it until it is consumed. And do not let it remain until the third day, because it will not be acceptable, since it was not chosen. Therefore, it will not be eaten. And all of those who eat it will rise up, rise up, sin against themselves, because thus I have written in the books of my forefathers. Thus I have found written in the books of my forefathers, and in the words of Enoch, and in the words of Noah, and you shall put salt in all your offerings. He said, season your food, my child. That's what he said. Season your food, my child. And you shall not omit the salt of the covenant from any of your offerings before the Lord. And take caution with the wood of the offering, that you do not bring wood for the offering except of such as these: cypress, bay, almond, fir, pine, cedar, juniper, fig, olive, myrtle, laurel, and asphallathos. But place some of these trees under the burnt offering on the altar with their appearance tested, and you will not place any split or dark wood, but wood strong and pure, which has no spots, perfect and new growth. And you will not place old wood there, because its aroma has gone out, because there is not therefore an aroma upon it as before. Except for these trees, there is none other that you will put on the altar, because its aroma has separated, and the smell of its aroma will go up to heaven. Keep this commandment and do it, my son, so that you might act uprightly in all your deeds, and at all of the appointed times be pure in your body, and wash yourself with water before you go to make an offering upon the altar, and wash your hands and your feet before you approach the altar. And when you have completed making the offering, wash your hands and feet again. And let there not be seen any blood upon you or your garments. Be careful, my son. Be extremely careful of blood. Cover it and the earth. And therefore do not eat blood, because it is life. And you shall not eat any blood, and do not accept gifts for any human blood, lest it be poured out in vain without judgment, because it is blood which poured out to cause sin for the earth. Without judgment, because it is blood, and the earth is not able to be purified of human blood, except by blood of one who shed it. And you shall not accept gifts or tribute for human blood, blood through blood, so that you may be accepted before the Lord God Most High. And he will be the protector of the good, and so that you might guard yourself from all evil, and so that he might save you from all death. I see, my son, every deed of mankind, that they are sins and evils, and all of their deeds are defilement and corruption and contamination, and there is no righteousness with them. Be careful not to walk in their ways, and to tread in their path, or to commit a mortal sin before God Most High, so that he will hide his face from you, and deliver you into the power of sin, and uproot you from the earth, and your seed from beneath the sky, and your name and seed will perish from all the earth. Turn yourself aside from all their deeds and from all their defilement, and keep the commands of God Most High, and perform his will, and act uprightly in all things, and he will bless you in all your deeds. And he will raise up from you a righteous plant in all the earth, throughout all the generations of the earth. And my name and your name shall not cease from beneath heaven forever. Go, my son, in peace. May God Most High, my God and your God, strengthen you to do his will. And may he bless all of your seed and the remnant of your seed for eternal generations, and with all righteous blessings, so that you might be a blessing in all the earth. And he went out from rejoicing. And it came to pass in the first week of the 44th Jubilee, in the second year, that the year in which Abraham died, that Isaac and Ishmael came from the well of the oath to Abraham, their father, to observe the feast of Shabuot, which is the feast of the first fruits of the harvest. And Abraham rejoiced, because both of his children came, for Isaac and many possessions in Beersheba. For Isaac had many possessions in Beersheba, and Isaac used to go and inspect his possessions and return to his father. In those days, Ishmael came to see his father, and both of them came together, and Isaac slaughtered a sacrifice as a burnt offering, and offered it up upon the altar of his father, which he built in Hebron. And he sacrificed a thank offering, and made a feast of joy before Ishmael his brother. And Rebekah made new round cakes of new grain, and she gave them to Jacob her son, to take to Abraham his father. from the fruits of the land so that he might eat and bless the creator of all before he died. And Isaac also sent by the hand of Jacob a good thank offering to Abraham so that he might eat and drink. And he ate and drank and blessed God Most High, who created heaven and earth. And he made all the fat of the earth and gave it to the sons of man so that they might eat and drink and bless their creator. And now I thank you, my God, because you have let me see this day. Behold, I am 175 years old and fulfilled in days, and all of my days were peaceful for me. The sword of the enemy did not triumph over me, and anything which you gave to me or my sons all the days of my life until this day. Oh my God, may your mercy and your peace be upon your servant and upon the seed of his sons, so that they might become an elect people for you and your inheritance from all the nations of the earth, from henceforth and for all the days of the generations of the earth. So this man lived his life a certain way, and his children was able to reap the benefit of it. His children were able to be blessed by it. And this is why he counseled his children the way he did. So Abraham didn't just die without speaking to his children. Abraham didn't just die without blessing them before he went. He gave them counsel. He thanked the Lord for the many blessings that he received, and then he went. But look, here it is. And he called Jacob and said, "My son Jacob, may the God of all bless you and strengthen you and do righteousness and his will before him. And may he elect you and your seed so that you become a people for him who always belong to his inheritance according to his will. And you, my son Jacob, draw near and kiss me." And he drew near and kissed him. And he said, "Blessed is my son Jacob and all his sons unto the Lord Most High forever. May the Lord give you righteous seed. May he sanctify some of your sons in the midst of all the earth. May the nations serve you, and all the nations bow down before your seed. Be strong before men, and rule over all the seed of Seth. Then may your ways be righteous, and the ways of your sons in order to be a holy people. May the Most High God give you all of the blessings with he blessed me, and with which he blessed Noah and Adam. May the rest upon the holy head of your seed throughout each generation and forever. May he cleanse you from all sin and defilement, so that he might forgive all your transgressions and your errings through ignorance. May he strengthen you and bless you, and may you inherit all the earth. And may he renew his covenant with you, so that you might be a people for him, belonging to his inheritance forever. And he will be God for you and for your seed in truth and righteousness throughout all the days of the earth. And you also, my son Jacob, remember my words and keep the commandments of Abraham your father. Separate yourself from the Gentiles, from the other nations, and do not eat with them, and do not perform deeds like theirs, and do not become associates of theirs, because their deeds are defiled, and all of their ways are contaminated and despicable and abominable. They slaughter their sacrifices to the dead, and to the demons they bow down. They eat in tombs, and all their deeds are worthless and vain, and they have no heart to perceive, and they have no eyes to see what their deeds are, and where they wander astray, saying to the tree, you are my God, and to a stone, you are my Lord, and you are my savior, and they have no heart. But as for you, my son Jacob, may God Most High help you, and the God of heaven bless you, and may he turn you from their defilement and from all their errors. Be careful, my son Jacob, that you do not take a wife from any of the seed of the daughters of Canaan. Remember, I went over why they did not want their sons to marry into Canaan, even to the point of Abraham telling his servant to go all the way to his kinsmen, so that way his son wouldn't intertwine with the Canaanites. Why? Because they were a cursed people, and God was going to uproot them from the land. He says, because all of his seed is destined for uprooting from the earth, because through the sin of Ham, Canaan sinned, and all of his seed will be blotted out from the earth, and all his remnant. And there is none who will be saved, for all of those who worship idols, and for the hated ones, there is no hope in the land of the living, because they will go down into the grave. And in that place of judgment, they will walk, and they will have no memory upon the earth, just as the sons of Sodom were taken from the earth, so too all of those who worship idols shall be taken away. Do not fear, my son Jacob, and do not be in terror, O son of Abraham. The Most High God shall protect you from destruction, and from all the ways of error he will deliver you. This house I have built for myself, so that I might cause my name to dwell upon it in the land. It has been given to you and to your seed forever, and it will be called the house of Abraham, and will be given to you and to your seed forever, because you will build my house, and you will raise up my name before God forever. Your seed and your name will remain in all the earth's generations. And he ceased commanding him and blessing him, and both of them lay down together on one bed. And Jacob slept on the bosom of Abraham, his father's father, and he kissed him 7 times, and his compassionate heart rejoiced over him, and he blessed him with all his heart. And he said, God Most High is the God of all and creator of all, who brought me out from the year of the Chaldees, so that he might give me this land to inherit it forever, to raise up a holy seed, so that the Most High may be blessed forever. This is what we got to do. This is what we're supposed to do with our children. We raise up our children as the holy seeds unto the Lord, to do his bidding, to establish the Lord's name throughout the earth. And he blessed Jacob, saying, my son is one in whom I rejoice in all my heart and all my emotions, and may your favor and your mercy rest upon him and upon his seed always. And do not forsake him and neglect him henceforth for all the eternal days. And may your eyes be open upon him and his seed, so that you might protect him and bless him and sanctify him for a people who belong to your heritage, and bless him with all your blessings henceforth for all of the eternal days, and renew your covenant and your mercy with him and with his seed, and with all and will and all of the earth's generations. And he placed the 2 fingers of Jacob on his eyes, and he blessed the God of gods, and he covered his face and stretched out his feet and slept the eternal sleep, and he was gathered to his fathers. During all this time, Jacob was laying on his bosom and did not know that Abraham, his grandfather, was dead. And Jacob awoke from his sleep, and behold, Abraham was cold as ice. And he said, "O Father, Father," and none spoke, and he knew that he was dead. Can you imagine that? I'm be honest with you, that's just a beautiful way to die. A beautiful way to go. You go, you say your prayer, you say your goodbyes, you enjoy your family, you spend time with them, and then you go to sleep, and that's the way you go. I've heard so many stories of those who pass in their sleep, and it's the most peaceful way to go. It's the most peaceful way to go. And this man went in the company of his children. He went in the company of his sons, after a celebration and after bestowing blessings and after speaking into their lives, and after that, and then he finally went to go after his last thank yous. And he rose up from his bosom and ran and told Rebekah his mother. And Rebekah went to Isaac in the night and told him, and they went together, and Jacob was also with them, and a lamp was in his hand. And they found Abraham lying dead. And Isaac fell upon his father's face and wept and kissed him. And the sound was heard in Abraham's house. And Ishmael, his son, arose and went to Abraham his father. And they wept for Abraham his father and all of Abraham's house. And they wept greatly. And his sons, Isaac and Ishmael, buried him in the cave of Machpelah near Sarah his wife, and all of the men of his house, and Isaac, Ishmael, and all of their sons, and all of the sons of Keturah wept for him 40 days in their place, and the days of Abraham's weeping were completed. It was completed after that. So when it says that Isaac and Ishmael came together and they buried him in the land with their fathers, and they buried him in the land with Sarah. So when you read in Genesis chapter 25, you don't know all the stuff that took place prior to. You don't know that Isaac and Ishmael came together and they threw a big old feast for their father, and to honor the Lord, and also to honor their father. And during that time, during that feast, Abraham began to just bless his grandchildren, well, bless his grandchild and bless his son, right? The promised seed and the promised seed. Basically, he dealt with the promise, right? You don't get that context. It says, and he lived 3 jubilees and 4 weeks of years, 175 years, and he completed the days of his life, being old and full of days, for the days of the lives of the ancients were 19 jubilees. That's a lot. That's a long time, y'all. 19 jubilees. Just do 49 times 19. Okay. And after the flood, I ain't gonna do it. I'm telling one of y'all to do it. And after the flood, they began to be less than 19 jubilees, and to grow old quickly, and to shorten the days of their lives due to so much suffering and through the evil of their ways, except Abraham. For Abraham was perfect in all of his actions with the Lord, and was pleasing through righteousness in all the days of his life. And behold, he did not complete 4 jubilees in his life until he grew old in the presence of evil, and his days were full. Did I hear this? Mm-mm-mm. And all the generations which will arise henceforth and until the day of the great judgment will grow old quickly before they complete 2 jubilees. So what's 2 jubilees, y'all? Two jubilees
A
is 49
hundred.
and 49. 49 and 49 rather.
So about 99 years.
About 99 years, right? I would say about 98. About 98 years.
Yeah, 98 years.
Mm-hmm. About 98 years.
Mhm,
So less than 100.
mhm.
For someone to live 100 years, they're lucky. They're blessed. Okay. And all of the generations which will arise henceforth of the day of the great judgment will grow old quickly before they complete 2 jubilees, and their knowledge will forsake them because of their old age, and all of their knowledge will be removed. And in those days, if a man will live a jubilee and a half, Jesus Christ, listen to this. If a man will live a jubilee and a half, they will say about him, he prolonged his life, but the majority of his days was suffering, anxiety, and affliction, and there was no peace because plague came upon plague, and wound upon wound, and affliction upon affliction, and evil report upon evil report, and sickness upon sickness, and every evil judgment of this sort, one with another, sickness and downfall, and sleet, and hail, and frost, and fever, and chills, and stupor, and famine, and death, and the sword, and captivity, and all the plagues, suffering. A jubilee and a half, y'all. That's 49 years. A jubilee and a half. So let's say 75 years. About 65 years. 60 between 49. So a half would be, yeah, I'll say 75 years. About 75, 74 years. They're gonna say you're lucky to have lived that long. At 75, 74, 70 years old, because of the wickedness of the world. And someone who lives 2 jubilees, which would be 98 to about 100, you're blessed. But someone who lives a jubilee and a half, my goodness, they got, wow. Do y'all see how this is? Because what the condition of the world is so wicked, and all of this will come in the evil generation which sins in the land. Pollution and fornication and contamination and abomination are their deeds. Then they will say the days of the ancients was as many of 1,000 years, and good. But behold, as for the days of our lives, if a man should extend his life 70 years, or if he is strong for 80 years, then these are then these are evil, and there is not any peace in the days of this evil generation. Wow. In this generation, children will reproach their parents. Listen up. And their elders on account of sin, and on account of injustice, and on account of the words of their mouth, and on account of great evil which they will do, and on account of their forsaking the covenant from which the Lord made between them and himself, so that they might be careful and observe all the commandments and ordinances of all of his law without turning aside to the right or left. For they all did evil, and every mouth speaks of sin, and all of their deeds are polluted and abominable, and all of their ways are contamination and pollution and corruption. Behold, the land will be corrupted on account of all their deeds, and there will be no seed of the vine, and there will be no oil, because of their works are entirely faithless, and all of them will be destroyed together, beasts, cattle, birds, and all of the fish of the sea, and on account of the sons of man. Some of these will strive with others, youths with old men, and old men with youths, the poor with the rich, and the lowly with the great, the beggar with the judge, concerning the law and the covenant, because they have forgotten the commandments and covenant and the festivals, and months, and Sabbaths, and jubilees, and all of the judgments, and they will stand up with bow and swords and war in order to return them to the way. But they will not be returned until much blood is shed upon the earth by each group, and those who escape will not be turned back from their evils. to the way of righteousness, because they will lift themselves up for deceit and wealth, so that they shall take everything of his neighbor, and they will pronounce the great name, but not in truth or righteousness. And they will pollute the Holy of Holies with their pollution and with their corruption of contamination. Y'all hear this? I mean, this is the time we live in. And there will be a great plague upon the deeds of that great nation from the Lord, and he will give them to the sword, and to judgment, to captivity, and to pillage and destruction. And he will rouse up against them the sinners of the nations, who have no mercy or grace for them, who have no regard for any persons, old or young, or anyone, for they will be cruel and powerful, so that they will act more evilly than any of the sons of men. And they will cause turmoil in Israel, and sin against Jacob, and much blood will be shed upon the earth. And there will be no one who will gather, and no one who will bury. In those days they will cry out and call and pray, and to be saved from the hand of sinners, from the nations, but there will be none who will be saved. And the heads of the children will be white with gray hairs, and an infant 3 weeks old will look aged like one of those years, 100. They said these babies gonna be out here looking like they struggling. And their stature will be destroyed by affliction and torment. And those days children will begin to search the law, and to search the commandments, and to return to the way of righteousness, and the days will begin to increase and grow longer. Listen up. Among those, the sons of men, generation, by year, until their days approach 1,000 years. So it's saying there's going to be a great reversal. So what's going to happen is going to be great wickedness, and people going to be, you're going to see somebody turn 75, you're going to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe they lived that long, man. They had a hard life, right? But even though the generation is going to be so evil and things of that nature, and it's gonna suddenly be some type of flip, and the children are going to start returning back to righteousness, and then the children of men is going to start living longer again. See, and this is only made possible through Jesus Christ. And there will be no old men, none who is full of days, because all of them will be infants and children, and all of their days they will be complete and live in peace and rejoicing. And there will be no Satan and no evil one who will destroy, because all of their days will be the days of blessing and healing. And the Lord will heal his servants, and he will rise up and see great peace, and they will drive out their enemies, and the righteous ones will see and give praise and rejoice forever and ever with joy. And they will see all of the judgments and all of the curses among their enemies, and their bones will rest in the earth, and their spirits will rejoice, will increase in joy. And they will know the Lord is an executor of judgment, but he will show mercy to hundreds and thousands, to all of them who love him. And you, Moses, write these words, because thus it is written, and set them upon heavenly tablets as a testimony for eternal generations. So after Abraham died, this account is given to Moses about everything, and he writes about it. And then this is where we get Genesis. Now, I keep telling y'all, Genesis is about the relevance of lineage. It's preferably dealing with Israel's. So this is why Genesis, you go from Adam to Abraham to Isaac to Jacob, and it keeps everything in that relevance. It doesn't fill in the blanks with a lot of stuff, because it's not relevant to the purpose of what is being. It's the beginnings, okay? And the beginnings speaking to how we get to the entire Torah, which leads us to the children of Israel. This is why Genesis is set up the way it is, and this is why you have Jubilees. This is why you have Enoch. This is why they had a book called Yasher. Why? Because those things didn't have to hold to the Genesis account. When they found the book of Jubilees, mind you, the Ethiopian church had the book of Jubilees for so long, but your Catholics and your Protestant Christians did not want to believe the writings and the historical account of some Africans. So they decided that it was it wasn't canon, because they didn't have no proof of a Hebrew version. But in 1913, I believe it was, a little shepherd boy was walking in Qumran, and he fell inside of a cave. And when he fell inside the cave, when they went to go rescue him out of the cave, he told them what was down there, and they saw scrolls. Scrolls. They saw an area for baptism. He fell into a community that was underground, and the writings have been preserved for generations, going back to the time of Christ and a little bit before, where the Essenes encamped there. And there was many writings. You had the Book of Jubilees, the Book of Enoch. You had Hebrew versions of different Bibles that we didn't know it, like not Bibles, different books of the Bible that they only had in Greek at the time. They saw them there in Hebrew. You had a Hebrew version with a older Hebraic literature of Jubilees, the Hebrew version of Enoch. They had Hebrew versions of the Hebrew. I believe they had the Hebrew version of Matthew. It was so many different 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 versions, different writings that was in Hebrew and Aramaic that was discovered in Qumran. And a lot of times they were saying, "Oh no, that's not canon. This is not canon. Don't add that into the Bible. Don't add that either. Don't take that out. Don't put that. Take that out. Nope. This is what they was having all these councils, the Council of Nicaea, and they was having all these different meetings to determine what they deem is scripture from a Western standpoint. They didn't even include the years and generations of the Ethiopian Christians and the Ethiopian Jews who were in Ethiopia, who also were Christians. They did not include nothing that they had going on. Yet the Ethiopian Bible has the Book of Jubilees and the Book of Enoch, and I believe the Apocrypha as well. And yet, for a lot of us Western Christians, these things aren't canon, but they've been reading it for generations. They understood it for generations, well before 1913 when it was found. And even after it was found in 1913, did y'all know that the Catholic Church had the colossal goal to basically try to invoke some type of authority over the land, to confiscate all of the writings, and they would not release it to the public? People had to go to court and fight against the Catholic Church to get the writings and the scrolls released that they had confiscated from that land, because the Catholic Church tried to have a monopoly on it. You can't have no monopoly on God's word. You can't do that. Did y'all know that? So this is why it's important to really be a student of the word. To really be a student of the word. But with all that being said, right? This is the last chapter that I'm reading from Jubilees. It says, "And it happened after the death of Abraham that the Lord blessed Isaac, his son, and he arose from Hebron and went to the well of vision in the first year of the third week of this Jubilee, and he lived there, 7 years. And in the first year of the week, a famine began in the land, other than the first famine, which occurred in the fields of occurred in the days of Abraham. And Jacob was cooking lentil soup. And Esau came in from the field hungry, and he said to Jacob, his brother, 'Give me some of the reddish colored soup.' And Jacob said to him, 'Hand over your primogeniture, basically your uh your 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 birthright. This right of firstborn, and I will give you bread and also some of this lentil soup.' And Esau thought, 'I will die. Of what use is this right of firstborn to me?' And he said to Jacob, 'I will give it to you.' And Jacob said, 'Swear to me today.' And he swore for him. And Jacob gave his brother Esau bread and soup, and he ate until he was satisfied. And Esau despised his right of firstborn. Therefore Esau's name was called Edom, which means red, on account of the reddish colored soup which Jacob gave him for his right of firstborn. And Jacob became the older one, but Esau was lowered from his seniority." This is the kicker, because this is even how Genesis ends. Genesis ends and says, "Thus Esau despised his birthright." What does that mean? He looked at that soup I mean, y'all, I know I'm heavy set, but I ain't gonna look at no I'm not finna look at no lentil soup and say, the heck with my birthright. I want this soup. That soup must have smelled phenomenal for this man to, and the reason why the scripture says he despised his birthright is because what it means is he considered his birthright, his promise, his God-given right as a firstborn to be worthless compared to soup. This is why his name became known as Edom, because you forfeited your entire birthright over some red soup, y'all, with red meat and lentils. And I want you to think about this, because the book of Philippians tells us that the Gentiles in the Philippian church in those days surrounded the area. It tells us that their God was their belly. Their God was their belly. And a lot of times you can track when you look at sin and that insatiable desire for sin, it can be tracked to that insatiable desire for food. And this is and this is why people have this insatiable desire, and it shows up in many different ways. Addictions. It shows up in many different ways, whether it's eating, whether it's some type of sin, whether, and in this case, this man had such a desire for this food that his birthright meant nothing to him. And I want y'all to think about that. What is your birthright as a child of God? As a child of God, your birthright is you being born again and being a joint heir with Christ. Your birthright is for you to go to heaven and have a new body and experience the new Jerusalem and the new earth. Your birthright is a co-heir with Christ. That's your birthright. You get gifts and blessings, yes, along the way, but your birthright is to inherit the kingdom. And what you're telling me is that Esau saw his birthright to inherit the inheritance of Abraham, Isaac. It would have been Abraham, Isaac, and Esau, but it became Isaac, and Jacob. Why? Because when he looked at his birthright, he said, my belly, my desire, my insatiable desire, being satisfied is more important than this birthright. And he deemed it worthless for that pot of soup. What have you picked over your birthright? What have you picked over heaven? What have you picked over the kingdom of God? I want you to think about it. Is it sex? Is it money? Is it food? Is it a girlfriend? Is it a boyfriend? Is it people's opinion? Is it your career? What have you picked over your spiritual inheritance? Think about that. Esau picked soup. What have you picked over God's kingdom? What have you picked and despised your birthright in heaven? Think about that. When you look at those in the world right now, until they accept Christ into their lives, they are to be compared with Esau, because they are currently picking their desire for this world over their birthright. I want y'all to think about it. Anybody got I'm gonna end here. Anybody got anything to say? Just with that latter end. I know it was so much said, but anybody got anything to say? That doesn't that make you just think? Doesn't that make you just think like, man, people out here sacrificing their birthright for temporary satisfaction? Temporary satisfaction. Think about that. Your birthright is not to be deemed worthless. Your birthright is so important. It determines your eternity. This is why we are born again believers. When Nicodemus asked the Lord, "How can I be born again? Do I have to enter into my mother's womb again?" He said, "Except the man be born of the water and of the Spirit, he cannot enter into the kingdom of heaven." So your birthright is to enter into the kingdom of heaven when you are born again. And you telling me that there are people out here forfeiting their birthright for temporary gain? Think about that. Meditate on that throughout the week. What am I forfeiting my birthright for anything temporary? Think about that. Y'all have a blessed evening. If you desire to sow, you can. You already know how to do so. Um, but listen,
Okay.
I love y'all.
It came to me.
Go ahead.
What could you give in change for your soul? What could you give? You